How's it going, NPA fans? Links Forte here, bringing you week 8 of the rundown this season. And guys, we have a great lineup of matches for you this week. Normally, I am joined by my co-host Levenant, but he had a very hot date, and he decided to choose a lady friend over Pokemon. I don't know if that was the right decision, but we'll let him make his bad decisions on his own. So, returning for the third time, I believe, this season, I am joined by Midnight Zero.
Yep. What is up, heroes? This is Midnight Zero, and I am so happy to be back here. I've really enjoyed being on this show the couple times that I have been. So this time, last time I had just Levenant. It was just Levenant and I having some one-on-one time. Now it's time to hang out with Lynx. Pretty excited.
I'm excited as well, man. Last time I was here with you, things got interesting. We're all telling Jodar not to fire us, and we've been telling Jodar that every week, really. But yeah,
ain't that the truth?
But yeah, this should definitely be a good week between the two of us. We can have a little bit of conversation, see what is going on in these battles. Maybe we can change each other's mind on some of these picks. I don't know. Definitely see what's going to happen, though.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I literally just looked at our picks, and I'm pretty sure we picked the same team for every single matchup.
Oh, well, that might be a problem, man.
You know what? Great minds think alike, right? Great minds.
We have been doing pretty good this season. Although last week I think you went 9-2 to my 8-3. I mean, at least I know we'll have the same record going into next week. So, so yeah. After a little interruption that just happened, you guys, we're just gonna hop right into these matches. It's always interesting when you just have a how do we hop back into this like we did last week? But so we can just hop right into
let's get into the first week. The first match we got, what do we have, Lynx?
We have the Iowa Hawluchas versus the Rochester Rhydons. And go ahead if you want to start it off.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think there's really a lot to say in particular about this sort of a matchup. I know that the Brady and the Iowa Hawluchas have definitely been improving over the course of the season. I saw the recent match with Dan, and I was really impressed with how that turned out. And it's clear that Radioactive is getting more comfortable with his team and improving. So he might, be able to pull off an upset here, in my opinion. But, Big Pom Gaming and the Rochester Rhydons have been proving time and time again, even if they get a loss, that they're playing really well in those losses and showing that, they mastered their team. They have the team building, the heat sets. I've seen a decent number of heat sets from Big Pom Gaming to kind of throw things out of the ordinary. When you have a relatively newer player like Radioactive to the league format and such, and maybe not one as skilled or still getting comfortable with their team, to see something that's out of the ordinary, to see something that might throw them out of their game plan is always a useful skill. And I feel like Pom is definitely going to be able to do that this week. And admittedly, of the analysts that did fill all their picks, there's no one really to say otherwise.
Yeah, and just to reference with Pom last week, he went up against Duncan, and there's just an elephant in the room that needs to be issued. So with the whole situation of the Ancient Power Baton Pass situation, I don't really know how big of an issue it was, but Jodar did come to us and say he wanted us to give his statement. So the confusion comes from Ancient Power being an exception to the Baton Pass clause, an oversight that many people didn't know about, including most of the members of the NPA Council and a few top-level players that were consulted over the weekend. The rule definitely had the exception, but nobody knew, and when the rules of the NPA were established, it was under the assumption that exception did not exist. As a result, Duncan, by the letter of the rule, did nothing wrong and will be awarded the 2-0 victory as if nothing if nothing had changed. Pom, on the other hand, will receive the 2-0 loss, but have one division loss removed from his record, which will not be included in tiebreakers unless against Duncan. Considering both John and Cobain won this week, and Kyle and Brady are relatively at a disadvantage in the playoff race, it shouldn't be much of an issue going forward. So that's just to say, Duncan gets the win.
Just get that cleared up.
Yeah, Duncan gets the win, Pom gets the loss, but it's not really going to affect their divisional race unless it comes down to a playoff situation between the two of them. So we just wanted to clear that up. there was no hard feelings really between the two. It was just something that was missed. And I asked Jodor about it. It's like, I always thought that was something that was included. And apparently the clause was about setup versus something, you know, in a move that could buff stats, which honestly, I forgot all about Ancient Power being something.
So that's the little loophole there.
Yeah, and apparently it's not even actually a thing on Showdown. Like, I guess that was something that was overtaught because who's really using Ancient Power on Togekiss and Togetic?
If you're relying on Ancient Power or Baton Pass to like ladder up on Showdown,
right?
You're probably not going to be laddering too high.
Yeah, but
okay.
Just referencing the battle in general, Palm had that battle in control all the way to the end. I mean, it was just I want to say maybe an over prediction at the end with what was it?
I chatted with Palm about it actually, and because I mentioned that, you know, I commented on his video saying that he played super well up until that point, and even then, it's not that he made a horribly wrong play. Right, it's not like he horribly misplayed. It's just that he didn't make the absolute safest play.
Right,
he was going for a play that maybe would have given him a better differential, thinking he had the win wrapped up. But in doing that play, he gave his opponent the slightest chance to actually take the victory.
Yeah.
And so, was it like a bad play? Probably not. Was it the best play? Also, probably not. But it's not like it reflects really poorly on him as a coach, right?
Not at all. And the thing is, with this red division, this division is kind of stacked. You have Duncan's there, Brady's there, as we mentioned, Palm is there, John is there, and Chris is there. That's a pretty stacked division, and I think only 3 teams from each division can make the playoffs. So you, in the division like this, you have to take every differential you can get. So with his thinking like that in the long run, it was, in my opinion, the right play. But when you're looking at it just from the battle, it doesn't seem like the right play. So it's a pick your poison kind of deal, and it just so happened Duncan got the boost that unfortunately couldn't allow Palm to win. I mean, but like I said, he controlled that battle pretty much the entire time. So
yep, definitely agree with you there.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. Palm's been in every single battle. I mean, you look at the ones he's lost. He lost both of them 2-0. I think his biggest victory was 3-0, but he's basically been in every single battle, or he's controlled every single battle. And I think this is just another one he can actually control. I wouldn't be surprised, because he lost that battle last week, I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to keep differential.
And bounce back even more.
I mean, bounce back and just to keep differential. I mean, Brady is coming off a 6-0 loss, and I don't know about you, but whenever I lose a battle 6-0, I'm kind of just like, what the hell just happened? So, yeah, I mean, I'm not always in my right state of mind.
I would say that if I did get beat 6-0. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, when you do get beat badly, right, it's kind of it's what's going on, you know, what did I do wrong? And, you know, you can react to that in a couple different ways, right? When something goes horribly wrong, when something leaves you confused like that, dumbfounded, you can either, okay, you can try and move on, you can just kind of look past it, you can not really pay heed to it, but in my opinion, that's not really the right way to go. Maybe if temporarily you kind of put it aside so you regain your senses, you start to think a little bit more clearly, and then you need to go back and you need to figure out what went wrong, right? If you get 6-0'd, there clearly was a problem, right? Something bad happened in the team building process and how you played, and it's a big problem. And if you don't go back to fix that, you're not going to improve, right?
Right. And I mean, I grew up playing sports, and I always look back on a loss thinking, because like in the majority of my sports, I was a captain, so I just kind of took it upon myself to say that I need to be better. And I kind of, you know, delved on, or I kind of just hung my head on a loss too long, and I couldn't pick my team up. It's just one of those that when you lose, like you said, you got to go back and learn from it, but you can't hang your head on it for too long, because you got to get ready for the next one. You just have to look at it and say,
can't throw in the towel.
Right. You just got to, you know, look at it and say, I should have done this, I should have done this. Well, I didn't prep for this, right? But I mean, in this matchup, I just think Palm has the overall advantage, not just because of the way he's playing, but just because he is the more experienced player.
I agree. I think this advantage primarily comes down to the coaches. Even looking at the teams, I do think Palm has a little bit of difficulty dealing with a lot of potential water spam. But again, I don't think that's enough to outweigh the coach advantage.
Yeah, I mean, Palm has a pretty good team to handle it, actually. I mean, it just, is he bringing the right team is the question.
Yeah, I guess maybe so.
So,
but anyways, we've been talking about Pum and Brady for quite a while. What's the next matchup we got, Lynx?
Our next matchup here is one that should be very good. Two teams who are, I think they are 5-1. The Philadelphia Braviaries and the Seattle Star Raptors. Or maybe they're 6-1. I might be saying that wrong.
They're doing well either way.
Yes, they are. So let's see. So the Braviaries are 5-1 and the Star Raptors are 6-1. So this is a very good matchup, and you and I were actually talking about this prior. Gerhardt has a very tough schedule going ahead, so he can't afford to look forward. He has to look at every single opponent he has. The one thing that's probably benefiting for him is I think he only has 2 divisional matchups left, so he just has to put himself in the driver's seat to stay ahead in the division.
Yeah, there's kind of a lot on the line for Gerhardt from this point out, right? He can't really look and be like, okay, I need a few wins and I have a couple matchups that really kind of favor me. No matter what's happening over the next few weeks, Gerhardt's going to have a really difficult opponent, and this week is certainly no exception. And I know in one of the previous pick'ems that I've been a part of, we talked about Gerhardt's team and how it's really well balanced, and it does favor the defensive side. It's kind of got like a bulky balance, but more on the bulky side feel to it, while still being able to, of course, bring some damage output. And then on the other hand, we have the Braviaries, right? We have this team with Thunderous T, Zygarde, Mega Scizor. We've got some real powerhouses with, a couple pivots to get up hazards, to defog, to potentially sponge hits, but a really offensive team. And so we kind of have this, these two, forces going in the exact opposite directions, right? And it's like, which one is going to be able to push the other one back? And it's going to be really, really interesting to see. I think where it's going to really push the coaches to play their absolute best.
Yeah, and I am looking forward to seeing this matchup, not because they are 2 of the leaders in this league right now, but just because of the offense versus defense type of play styles right now. And because Gerhardt has been really creative in the last couple weeks, especially with that Como-O. I think Como-O last week had 4 kills, and then the week prior to that, he brought a especially defensive set, which is a really interesting set. Wasn't it your heat of the week that week? Or?
Yeah, it was in heat of the week.
So yeah, I've been like, as much as Levo and I fangirl over Swami, like the last couple weeks, the last couple weeks has been really interesting to see what kind of heat Gerhardt could bring. But I just think in this matchup, normally I'm a person that says defense wins championships, but this is just a regular battle right now, or a regular season battle. So I'm just gonna have to go with the offensive team and see what kind of setup Cobain could bring with the likes of Thundy T, Zygarde, and Mega Scizor.
Yeah, admittedly, just this kind of one for me breaks down to the teams themselves. I don't really see very many answers to Zygarde on Gerhardt's team, right? You would think Bronzong would be super helpful for that, because of Thousand Arrows just being as good as Thousand Arrows is. That's going to play a huge role. I think Mega Scizor is going to be super helpful for shutting down, Sylveon, Mamoswine, and Zarina. There's not really a lot, I think, in Gerhardt's defensive cores, right? In his main, his bulk, his special bulk, his mixed bulk and such. I don't think there's really a lot that can actually take on the type advantages that Chris Cobain can bring with stuff like Zygarde and Scizor and potentially even Thunderous T. I think that if Gerhardt's going to want to win this matchup, he's going to need to bring a little bit more offense than he's typically comfortable with. He's going to need some offense, or at least 1 or 2 Pokemon that are able to out-offense a few of Chris Cobain's Pokemon, while bringing a lot of probably 3 or 4 really bulky Pokemon. He's not really going to be able to afford to kind of play the middle ground and be kind of wishy-washy with, slight or like little bit of damage output while being pretty defensive. He's kind of have to commit with each Pokemon, because anything that's even the slightest bit wishy-washy, if it's not 100% clear that it's a very defensive wallish Pokemon, it's going to get overrun by Chris Cobain's offense, which is pretty much all that a lot of his team can offer, right?
Right. And that's the other thing. It's just because the way his team is set up to be sort of defensive, like, he has brought some offense, but because of the way it's set up to be sort of defensive, it allows, Cobain to get a Pokemon in and just set up and then run through the team. He has to be smart about the way he's playing. Like originally I thought, oh, maybe a Choice Spec Sylveon could, help punch a wall through his team or just do something. But he has Empoleon for that. He has Magmortar just to resist something. It's just going to be hard for him to find a window. And
agreed.
I just don't know where that window comes in from. But I do think he will, make this a really good battle. I think it's a toss-up because of how great they both are. But I just think in the end, Cobain pulls it out.
Yep. I think the team matchup goes to Cobain. But, if there's a coach that can pull it back, if there's a coach that can work it around and put it in his favor, if there's a coach that can team prep and come up with some sort of solution to, climb an insurmountable wall in front of him, it's probably Gerard. So
yeah. But I do expect him to I expect him to be on your Heat of the Week next week. So just look out for something.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So let's jump into our next matchup here. We have the Free State Torcats versus the New Orleans Pelipers. And what are you seeing in this matchup?
What am I seeing in this? I'm seeing a lot of faith in the New Orleans Pelipers. I didn't really know the New Orleans Pelipers or the coach very well at the beginning of this season, and I had heard some good things, but what really kind of clicked with me is that our playstyles are very similar. Kind of a bulky offense, maybe even closer towards like balanced bulky, but very much a momentum-based team. And I don't think Duncan really has a lot to handle that. Duncan has been doing really well with, and what in my opinion has been one of the more poor drafts, but has brought a lot of creativity to the table and has shown that, Duncan knows what he's doing, right? You don't have to have a perfect team to be able to be good at Counter League format. If anything, you can definitely make up for it by knowing how to play that well. And so it is a bit tricky, but I think the Pelipers, with their more balanced team, will be able to exploit the very similar typings and few very prominent weaknesses of Duncan's team, whether that's, the ground weakness, ice weakness, water weakness. There really isn't a lot that the Torcats can really do about that, except for just try to play around it. And I think the safe play style of the Pelipers thus far is going to mean that there aren't going to be big plays that, gain huge advantages, but over time, the battle is going to slightly and slowly but surely start to move more and more in the Pelipers' favor, and eventually the Torcats are going to look at a wall that simply just can't climb.
Yeah, and something I've noticed, especially when John played Kelly a couple of weeks ago, was that John just waits for that opening. He waits for that momentum shift to basically just stop you in your tracks and then win the game. And it's just been very interesting to see. Like I followed the GBA for a couple of years, back when John first joined, and it was interesting to see from what he was back then to what he is now, basically a high level competitor who's
how he's
looking
matured as a player.
Yeah. And you see him coming from, maybe bottom of the GBA to not only a top player here, but he placed runner up in the P4G last year. The only person he lost to was Kelly. I don't think he really feels that he's avenged that loss because it wasn't for a championship against Kelly, but John is a force to be reckoned with. Like, John's just sitting here is like, you make one mistake, I take advantage of it and end this battle. But,
yeah, he's that kind of player who just keeps up like really good defense for a while, and then it's just kind of like waiting, just patient. And it shows that he's very intelligent with just kind of like waiting and is able to acknowledge when an opponent makes that sort of mistake and then totally capitalizes on it. And while I'm not going to say that Duncan is likely to make those mistakes, I think if anything, he's proven to be one of the better battlers. But I think that his team is giving John a lot of holes to exploit.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Duncan doesn't have the best of drafts, but he has, played with it the way he likes to play, and he's made some, as we mentioned, the Togetic baton pass shenanigans from last week. It was very interesting to see because, like I said, no one would think to even use it in that way. So Duncan has, in the short weeks that he's been playing in the format between the GBA and the MPA, he's grown. He's learned to be a little more creative with his sets. I think it's going to favor him in the long run. I just don't think this week is the week, or at least not against John. I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair assessment.
And John has some hole punching powers if need be with a choice band Victini or a choice Bex Raikou. Just to put that out there.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. That they definitely bring some power. But regardless, if I had to go with a team, I would definitely go with John in New Orleans Pelipper this year.
All right. So moving on to our next one. Two bottom of the league teams, but both very good competitors. The Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Pichus.
Ooh. Okay, so what to say here? I guess I'll give myself a break. What are you thinking, Lynx?
I mean, these are two teams that I think kind of are underperforming at the moment. But, Nexus, we know Nexus is a good battler from just seeing some of his videos, but it could be, a lot of people are having that Gen 6 to Gen 7 trying to work out the new mechanics, the new toys and things like that syndrome. Right. So it could be some of that with Nexus. With Kyle, I'm looking at his team, and I think we've only seen Rain once or twice. I'm not sure, but he hasn't really
a very clearly Rain-centric team,
right? But I just look at it and say he hasn't had the matchups, and I think that's always going to be an issue with Rain because most people draft Electric, most people draft Speed, or just anything to stop Rain once someone sees Politoed drafted, or now seeing Pelipper drafted. Like if they know they have to face it, they're drafting something to stop it. And so I just think a Rain team in draft format in general, it's good, but once everybody sees it coming, they know how to stop it, or they have a way that they can stop it. And I think that's kind of worked against Kyle when it comes to his team building, because he looks at one or two Pokemon and says, well, they can stop it this way or they can stop it that way. So I think he just gets away from the Rain in that sense.
I think that's definitely a very difficult thing to balance in the league format. And a lot of it comes down to with the coach's comfort with that particular weather style. For example, if you have a particular like Sun team and you're running, Megazard Y, it's that sort of a core, that sort of synergy might be essential to your team functioning well, and it might be incredibly predictable, but you might have to just bring it anyways. And you're gonna have to play around it. You're gonna have to draft other mons. You're gonna have to bring other mons that counter the very clear counters to your weather. And yes, is that kind of a risky move? Yeah. Is it maybe a little overconfidence, kind of a ballsy move? Probably, but sometimes that's just how you have to play. And if you're going to draft and broadcast one of the clear, like core synergy or synergistic components of your team via weather, you got to be prepared to do that. You have to be able to say, hey, I'm going to bring Rain. You're going to know it. You're going to prepare for Rain, and you're still not going to beat it, right? And we haven't really seen that confidence from Kyle A just yet.
Yeah, I know Kyle A. I've talked to him a lot, but I've never talked to him about this team just because I don't want to. But, I mean, just from playing Rain myself, I've never been a fan of it just because it takes a little too much to set up. And it's normally Rain teams rely on the Rain, whereas you look at maybe Sun or Sand, they don't necessarily rely on that weather because they're built in a way that they don't have to. You see a T-Tar and an Excadrill, and you're like, oh, well, Excadrill's there, so obviously this team is going to rely on Sand, but that's not always the case. All I have to do is get rid of your faster Mon, or get rid of something that beats Excadrill, and I don't need my Sand anymore. Kind of the same way with Sun. As long as I don't need my Chlorophyll user, Zard X or Zard Y itself punches a hole in your team. It doesn't need Sun, it just uses the Sun. Right, and you have Politoed who can't do anything. And you have Pelipper who...
Although
nice
I
toy.
will say, Belly Drum Max Attack, or Belly Drum Adamant Politoed is something to see.
It was.
That was something to see.
I'm not going to say anything, but I think he stole that Belly Drum from me because I used Belly Drum like a few weeks back on Magmortar. Just saying. I'm going to throw that out there.
I'm not going to say anything, but
but yeah, I do love seeing, Belly Drum on something that's a little weird, but
yeah, but yeah, getting back to the matchup, I do think the Pichus have a better team lineup, but I just think, despite both these coaches very clearly not being 100% comfortable with their teams just yet, I think that Kyle A is at least more comfortable with the new meta and maybe even at least knows his team better, if not able to use it better than the Num Nexus is so far.
Right, and I just think this is a good week for him to actually bring Rain and just have fun with it. Like, I don't see much other than Electivire who maybe stops his Rain.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tangrowth, but like, you know, he's got Tornadus D for that. You know, he's got Mega Aerodactyl for that. Like,
he's got Kingdra.
I think it's doable. It's definitely doable.
Yeah, I think this is a good week for Rain.
It's hard.
So let's
hope we see it. Let's hope
I really want to see it.
Right?
I really want to see it. I really want to see Rain, you know, just go for it all.
Yep. Okay, next up, what do we have?
We have the Hampshire Haunters and the Adelaide Umbreon.
Okay, so the Haunters and the Umbreons. Now, I feel bad because almost every week I've kind of picked against the Haunters. And I feel bad because I don't want Goffies to think that I think he's a bad battler, right? To be in the league, you know, to be in the MPA, you have to at least know what you're doing, right? You have to be a decent battler. You have to, you know how to team build and such. But the range of skill value varies quite a bit, right? I would say that, you know, some of the top battlers in this league, in contrast to some of the worst battlers in this league, even though still good, is still quite the span, right?
Right.
And so I don't want Goffies to think that I think he's a bad battler by any means, but I do, at least from all the matches up until this point, have a lot more faith in Cress to be able to build a team, use her team a bit better to outplay Goffies in this upcoming week. And that's ultimately what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. And it's not just that. I really like Cress's team. Like, it's weird, but it has a build. Like, it's a hyper offensive team. The issue is I haven't really seen Cress use it that way. And Gofi's team is, to me, it's just kind of all over the place. Like, it's not really balanced.
It's kind of a lost cause.
Right. It's not balanced. It's not defensive. It's not offensive. It's something. Yeah. And so I really never know what I'm going to see each week, or week in and week out. So
which can be good.
It can be good because you have the potential for the upsets, which we've seen him pull off a couple of times.
Shockingly. Such as inherent to the name upset, right?
Yes. But I just think Cress has an understanding of what her team is. I've mentioned this so many times, like, she's really creative when it comes to her sets. And I think that creativeness helps her this week as well. Unfortunately, she had to take a forfeit loss because of her schedule last week. But Cress is more than is more than capable, or more than skilled battler. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what I want to say right now.
Words. It's all right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know words. But yeah, Cress is a very skilled battler. She's proven that this season. She proved it last season. She knows what she's doing. And I think she just picks up another win here.
Yep. I think she's going to keep doing what she knows how to do. And that's
have fun.
Play Pokemon well.
Play Pokemon and have fun. All right. So we didn't really get to talk about the matchup. Yeah, that was a short one. That was a short one. We didn't really talk about the matchups, but it's two teams that, you know, haven't been at the top of their game this season. Let's just say that.
I never know what the Hunters are going to bring, right? I never know what kind of a play style they're going to bring. And I did say that the kind of diversity, that sort of unexpected, you know, or lack of predictability factor is a good thing. But when there's nothing that stands out about your team that it can do well, that's also not a very good thing, right? Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, this team, it's like, it can run hyper offense, it can also run stall, it can even run a decent, like, volt turn balance core team. Like, I don't know what it's going to bring, but it can do multiple things well. You know, the Hunters kind of have half that, right?
Right.
They've got I don't know what it's going to bring. It can do a lot of different things, but it doesn't really have the part where it really stands out as being particularly good at one of those sorts of themes, right?
Right.
I do think if something is going to be really important this week, it might be that Venusaur, given that it could help out with Zoomeril, if in the sun somehow.
I mean, Z Sunny Day? I mean, it's not
Maybe.
it's not the best of
it's
heat,
not
but
too-
it's effective, at least in this battle.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, like, it could help out, you know, if you got sun boosted hidden power fires, maybe if you get a growth off, you're putting in a lot of work against the team, actually.
Right. I mean, barring Salazzle having a focus sash, I don't think it needs too much investment to knock that thing out with an earthquake.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Yeah. So there's some potential there. It's just we haven't really seen him use his team effectively to really have confidence in it.
Yep,
All right.
precisely.
So for the next matchup here, we have the Minnesota Vikavolt and the United Kingler.
Ooh, this matchup. I'm torn here. I'm torn here. A lot of people are probably not. A lot of people are probably like, oh, this is an easy chalk up to Dan and the Vikavolts, right?
Yeah, I don't believe that.
I'm sure at least there are some people out there thinking that, but I'm really torn. I didn't know much about Professor Willow going into this season until he started taking over these teams, but since seeing his team building process, since seeing him battle with the Pokemon he brings, and how he's been using the team that he's been given, man, have I been impressed. I'm really shocked with how well Willow's proven to be able to team build and then do exactly, or pretty much use that team building, use that creativity, have a plan in the team building process that is very successful in the game itself, that he's able to carry out that plan and do it so well against teams that are clearly built just naturally better than his own, has been incredibly impressive. And as a big fan of Dan's, I really want to say, and I did end up saying, I think Dan will win because I know that he's also an incredibly skilled player, and I think he has a naturally better team. It is going to be a bit of a nail biter, I think. I think Willow can bring a lot of heat and is going to be able to use it pretty effectively to give Dan a run for his money. We saw last week with Iowa Hawluchas that, you know, even when going up against a team that is considered, you know, not doing as well in the league, even that lower end of the spectrum is still something formidable and still something that can put up a fight. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, the first thing I thought about when I saw this matchup, I was like, this is going to be a somewhat of a defensive battle for maybe two people looking at a moment to set up. You know, Willow has the Mega Gyarados and the Latios who are just waiting for that moment for their opponent to make a bad read and set up either a Dragon Dance or just drop a Choice Specs Draco. And I just feel like the way Dan plays overall and given his team, you won't really, or he won't, or Willow won't have that opportunity. Like, it's going to be hard for Willow to find that, you know, time to set up anything. Maybe he brings a physical Latios, I don't know, maybe just to throw it off. But I look at Vaporeon,
so when looking at the Vikavolt team real quick, you know, I talked about the coaches before, but I think the Hail Core really gives Willow difficulty, right?
Okay.
Just look at Alolan Sandslash and look at Willow's team.
It's ran through.
Right. Like, only Alomomola is there. So all you need to do is maybe bring Alolan Ninetales with Freeze Dry. And so I think just that core alone gives Willow so much difficulty that I think it sways the matchup pretty heavily in Dan's favor. Though, like I said, I do have faith in Willow's team building skills. Like, no doubt. So, should be a fun one. I'm hoping it's a fun one, right?
I am too. This is the thing. I love Doublade. I found a newfound, like, favorite Pokemon towards the second half of Gen 6 in Doublade, right? And I think that's an interesting bring for Willow. I think last week he brought like a really defensive set that had Substitute on it, or maybe it was the week prior. But he brought a really interesting Doublade set. And with that Ninetales and Alolan Sandslash core, if it's bulky enough, I think he can maybe do some damage to it. It's just, what is the EV spread to keep it alive? And
to be able to take multiple hits, like, is it?
I mean, it can take an earthquake. It can
switching in, right?
Well, I don't think it's going to consistently switch in. I think what it can do is be paired up with a Alomomola and get Wish Passes. He just has to make sure he's hitting the right thing. He's hitting the right thing, and it can take earthquakes, no problem. But I don't know Alolan Ninetales' full moveset to say, can it take something on the special side? Because it doesn't have a great special defense stat, even though it's being bulked up by an Eviolite. So I think Doublade plays a role. Just how does he keep it healthy? So I mean, that's a key Pokemon in my mind, at least from a defensive standpoint. And Mega Gyarados, obviously.
I wonder if we're gonna have some interesting weather wars with Torkoal.
That's it's an interesting question, but I don't think he wants that weather war. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, like, if they're, between the two weathers, like, obviously Dan's is going to be much stronger, but is it a good move to just concede that right from the start of the battle?
Yeah.
That's the real question. I'm kind of going at it.
I mean, I don't know Torkoal's base special attack stat off the top of my head, but I mean, an HP steal still hurts.
Yeah, so. HP steal from anything is gonna hurt in the Alolan Ninetales. Maybe not a Shuckle, but like.
Yeah, I think I'm looking it up right now. It has an 85 special attack, so
even then, I would imagine like a Fire Blast would hurt too.
Yeah, a Fire Blast a Fire Blast.
Eruption.
I think HP still, just because Fire Blast not being in the sun once Ninetales comes in. But I mean, if Dan leads off with Ninetales, he's 9 times out of 10 he's setting up Aurora Veil, so I don't think it's the worst thing to happen.
Yeah, agreed.
So that is an interesting matchup to possibly see.
Definitely watch out for it.
Yes. All right. So now the team that I believe we all fangirl over.
Of course.
Colorado Rapidash versus the New York Clinks.
Cue the fangirl.
All
right. So what are you thinking, Lynx?
I mean, I'm always interested to see Swami. At this point of us recording, you haven't uploaded your Heat of the Week, but I'm going to assume that Wishy-Washy was there somewhere, right? No?
Of course.
Okay, because that was like a beautiful bring.
It was heat. It was very heat.
I was watching the battle, and I'm thinking, Wishy-Washy is putting in some like work right now. Like, Wishy-Washy in the school form has some power. Obviously, the one drawback is its speed, but it has really good offensive pressure. And once it got down to its base stat or its base form, you saw, I think it was Elliot, he went for Stealth Rocks, for late game rocks, and then all you see is this thing go for Rest and Sleep Talk, and I'm just thinking,
and the party comes back.
This is just
the
beautiful.
Fish all come back.
It's like, this is the thing we expect to see every week from Swami. It's just the stuff you never expect. Like, I wanted to see, like an unnerved T-Tar that was scarfed, but this was even better.
Yeah.
So I definitely
just perpetually incredible surprises, and not just the fact that they are surprises, it's that they work so well.
Yeah.
Right. Just like I was talking about with Willow, it's really impressive when someone can team build, think outside the box, create an incredibly clever set that synergizes super well with the rest of their team and is critical and actually adds so much to the overall game plan that works so well against the enemy. There's not much more to say about that. I really like Papa C and the New York Clinks as well. I don't agree with a couple of the recent trades, but I know that Papa C is a very competent battler, and I've been impressed with Papa C's team building in the past too. He's the person who's run, an almost max defense Mega Alakazam to potentially take sucker punches from a banded Emboar and KO it. Like, there's definitely some creativity on both sides, and they both can play well. I think, Papa C has had a lot of close matches that have ended up in losses, which is really unfortunate because his record does not reflect how skilled he actually is. So it might be easy to look at the records going into this matchup and think, oh, Swami is like the clear victor here. And to be honest, we're all such fangirls of Swami because of how incredible he's been doing that almost any matchup, he's going to be like, oh, you just can't go against Swami. But this is going to be a much closer match, I think, than a lot of people are going to give Papa C credit for. So I'm excited for Papa C to turn heads this week.
Yeah, Papa C is what, 1-5. I know his differential is really low. Let me pull it up. It's a -2 differential. Like, you normally don't see something like that.
Right.
Like, you see someone at 1-5, and you're thinking, oh, they probably have like a -10 or 15 differential. But it's only -2, which shows how close he's been in every single battle. It's just one turn that changes the tide of the battle. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either Swami win like 1-0 or 2-0, or even Papa C picking up a win. But the thing I've noticed throughout this season,
it's gonna be a great one.
Yeah, the thing I've noticed about this season though is Swami doesn't beat himself, and
yeah,
that's like really key when it comes to any Pokemon battle, in my opinion.
Agreed. A lot of it's about the mentality,
right?
But looking at the Pokemon themselves, looking at the teams themselves, what are some Pokemon that you think are going to be really important this week? On my end, I think Excadrill is going to play an incredibly important role this week, being able to outspeed potentially Scarf Kyurem, Scarf Jirachi, Mega Alakazam, being able to hit just about everything really hard with those Earthquakes or Iron Heads. I think the Sand Core is coming, and it's going to be coming in full force with probably a Life Orb Excadrill.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the one key factor. I see Papa C either bringing, maybe both. I see him bringing either Clawitzer or Gligar to potentially stop that Excadrill, or just to slow it down some. Maybe, I don't know how well Clawitzer maybe defensively takes an Earthquake that's not boosted, but that's the potential. Gligar's there to stop the Excadrill. I think Gligar actually stops it pretty well. Agreed. But I mean, we've seen like an Earth Power from an Excadrill in the past, just from various leagues, and I think that's a meme now, right? Earth Power Excadrill.
Apparently, I think Papa C has brought a Light Ball Fling Earth Power Excadrill before.
Yeah, I think that was his meme. So I mean, if anyone's gonna stop Excadrill, I think it will be Papa C. But if Swami knows that meme, maybe he brings something like really crazy, like an HP Ice Excadrill. It's just so crazy to even think about it that I have to laugh while saying it.
You know what I think we might actually see as kind of a little bit of heat. This is my like heat forecast for this matchup. I think we might see a relatively offensive Blastoise with Aqua Jet to potentially counteract the Excadrill sweep. Because outside of that, there really isn't a lot of good priority on Papa C's side. Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be his, other than Pinsir having Quick Attack, I think that's his only priority on his team, right? Maybe Gligar. I think Gligar has Quick Attack as well.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah,
that's the only thing I can think of, though.
Oh, Blaziken, I found out from experience, Blaziken gets Vacuum Wave, so he could bring a special Blaziken.
That's true.
I mean, he has a few things. I just think it comes down to, as it always does, or usually does, is team building.
But you prep correctly?
Right.
Can you neutralize all the threats?
And I just think that Swami, just based on the way both teams are playing this season, I just think that Swami pulls one out. Obviously, it's going to be a close one. 1-0 or 2-0 in Swami's favor is what I believe.
Yep, I agree. Swami's a train. Don't get in the tracks.
Alright, so moving on to our next matchup, we have the Munchlaxter United versus the Duke City Doublades. What are you seeing?
What am I seeing? I am seeing King Bub. I'm seeing King Bub sitting behind his computer, thinking about how he wants to team build, getting real creative, letting the juices flow through his brain, and coming up with something really cool, something really effective, making the most of the arguably pretty bad team that he was given and had to stitch together, and coming out with a victory. I think that King Bub has a better mentality and has proven that even if a not so great team, he's kind of mastered it and found his groove with it more so than Skylar has for the Duke City Doublades. Each week it's tough sometimes to see the losses that Skylar goes through. It seems like there isn't a lot of damage output. It doesn't seem like there's really much of a, defensive core that he's able to work with. The other week against, Kelly and Under the Radar, it was a real struggle. I feel like at the beginning of each matchup, every time I look at Skylar's team, I say, oh, the opponent's team clearly has the advantage here. And I don't know if that's because of a lack of team prep, a lack of team building or not, or simply just that the team hasn't worked out as anticipated. And I think that's going to be difficult to overcome every single week. And thus far, Skylar hasn't shown that he can overcome that. So I don't really have much of a reason to believe in him more than King Bub.
Yeah. And this is one of those unfortunate things to say. It's like you have a coach that's 0-6. I think they're the last team that hasn't picked up a win this season. And, when I look at things, I'm just saying, based on the way he's played all season, the closest battle he's had were 2 3-0s, which he lost. I just look at it and say, Skylar's not really confident in his team. I don't think he's having fun right now. I mean, most people don't have fun when they're losing. I don't know how much time he has to prep, but when I look at it, it's just I don't see any matchup that he can exploit, or every week he doesn't exploit it. I mean, personally, I'm not a defensive player, so I can't say, this is a good team or it's a bad team. I just don't see a way for him to pick up kills week in and week out other than like a Choice Bandit Star Raptor.
Right.
So
I agree. And, we were talking earlier, right? When you get 6-0'd, when you get bodied in a match, you can't, hang your head forever, right? You can't get bogged down by it. But you also need to go back and you need to see what you did wrong. You need to figure out, what went wrong. How can you improve? How can you look at the next week and try something different that might give you a better result, right? And, I'm not going to claim to be tight with Skylar. I'm not going to claim to know what his team building process is, what his thought process is. Does he hang his head about these matches? Does he go back and look through them and study rigorously? I'm not going to claim to know that. But I am going to say that to me, it appears that that's not really happening. So that doesn't give me any hope that results are going to change.
Right. Like you said, it's a mentality thing, and I just don't think it's there for him right now. Bub, on the other hand, Bub is just like always positive. Other than, the last 2 weeks, the one thing he hasn't been happy about is when he played Elliot, he won by timer, which it's not the best thing to have,
sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. I know him and Elliot didn't have fun playing that battle, as they both said. And then he had to pick up a forfeit win against Crest last week. So, I mean, we all know Bub's a great battler because he's proved it this season. Like, he hung with Elliot 2-timer. He picked up, a good win with his first week of a constructed team, or reconstructed team. Like, Bub is what, 3-1 or 4-1 since entering the league? Like, Bub is basically just proven he belongs here. He knows what he's doing with this reconstructed team. And with this division he's in, Bub is like, I think I'm safe to say Bub is going to make playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play then too.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really think there's much more to look at with the matchups. I just think Mega Pinsir, like, that's the only one matchup I can look at, is Mega Pinsir kind of has fun with this team, maybe outside of Jolteon, just throwing a Thunderbolt at it, but I think it's going to be interesting to see, how both teams team build, because Bub never backs down from his team build. Like, he looks at every opponent the same. He looks at himself as the underdog who needs to come in and pick up a win. And then you look at Skylar, who hasn't picked up that win yet. How is he going to team build? What's his mentality like? Will he finally...
Does he have the eye of the tiger?
Right. Will he finally find that opening in somebody else's team, or against someone else's team? So it'll be an interesting to see how both teams build in this case.
We'll see. Either way, I hope that Suicune plays an important role, because I love watching Suicune play.
I don't.
Anyways.
Alright, so our next matchup is the Seattle Sea Kings versus the Los Angeles Landorus.
Okay. The Seattle Sea Kings versus the Los Angeles Landorus. Now, to me, this is kind of a difficult one. Jerry Oak has shown many times that he knows what he's doing. He can play well, and he can keep it together. But a little bit shaky. It's been a little bit shaky, and I would say it's quite the opposite for Jodor. Jodor, despite having a couple rough weeks, has figuratively turned up the heat in his team building, of all people I would know, and is really bringing a lot of creativity, a lot of new thoughts to the table, right? It's one thing to look at a problem, to look at an obstacle in your way, and to try to say, okay, well, I can't really do much more about that, and just try to push through it. But it's another to think, oh, I can't, right off the bat, there aren't very many solutions. I can't think of anything that I'm already familiar with to get through this problem. And to really think outside the box and try to throw the opponent off, to do something crazy, unexpected. And that's been Jodor lately, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. I know at the beginning of the season, he had a lot of game plans that were very strict, very, I don't know how to describe it, but there was a schedule, there was a plan, this was supposed to happen, and when that didn't happen, because things very rarely go according to plan, things would kind of crumble apart, and that Jodor seems to be of the past. And so I am looking forward to seeing this upcoming matchup, and I do think Jodor is going to be able to out team build and throw off Jerry Oak this upcoming week.
Yeah, the one thing when I watch Jerry Oak's battles, just like everyone, they start the battle off really hyped. But the thing is, because Jerry Oaks is in front of the camera, sometimes you can't hear it with a voice, but you can see it in their face and their reactions. When something goes wrong, Jerry just like drops his energy. And sometimes that can affect the way you're playing, the way you're thinking, because you're not staying in one state of mind. Like, we talk about playing on tilt, but Jerry, when he makes, when one thing goes wrong, it's not really tilt, but it's just disappointment or sadness. I really don't know what to call it. And so he's playing in a different mindset from the way he started. Like, when I watch his battles, he always starts them amazing, but then that one thing goes wrong and it's a completely different Jerry Oak that we see. And when we saw at the beginning of the season, he started off with 2 big wins. Granted, they were against 2 bottom of the league teams, but Jerry Oak is very confident in this team. He's a competent team builder. He's a competent battler. I think he can build a team that goes toe-to-toe with Jodor. But like you mentioned, the way we've seen Jodor in the the recent weeks, he's changed his battle mentality. I think Jodor pulls it out at the end. Like, he's no longer relying on one plan and then, well, this didn't work out, so what do I do now? He's saying, well, this didn't work out, so now I do this.
Right.
So
moving on to the next thing rather than hanging your head.
Right.
That's been the theme of this.
Maybe we should finally put a title on it. It says, "Move on to the next thing."
Yeah, don't hang your head.
Something like that.
but yeah. As far as the Pokemon themselves go, I don't really have a lot to say. Landorus T is threatening every single week, and I think the ground types on Jodor's team, whether it's Zydoge or Landorus T, are going to put in quite a bit of work, especially because of 1,000 Arrows on Zygardes. But really, with Jodor's creativity of late, I'm really not sure what to expect. I think with just about any Pokemon, even if maybe considered unconventionally or conventionally not so great in this sort of matchup, he could throw some heat on it to turn it around and fit it into a bigger plan, a bigger machinery for his team, and make use of it. So I'm not going to say exactly what I think Jodor is going to bring or what he's going to find incredibly valuable, because I really don't know, and I'm just kind of looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we will see Jerry Oak at least team build for is the possibility of a Scarf Zydoge, just because I think
it's good.
It's good, and because Tapu Koko can easily bring HP Ice just to stop that thing in its tracks because it can't take the hit. So I think it's something that maybe Jerry preps for, thinking, well, he's going to bring a Scarf ground type, so what's my way to beat it? So I think that's one of the things he has to prep for. Yeah, that's
definitely a fair point.
But I mean, this one I think is closer than maybe we're predicting, but I think it's a Jodor battle to win, basically.
Agreed.
All right.
And
so
with that, should we move on to the next matchup?
All right. So second to the last battle here, we have the Tampa Bay Luxrays and the Waterloo Sawsbucks.
Okay. Tampa Bay Lux Rays and the Waterloo Sawsbucks.
Yes.
All right, what to say about this? I know for a fact that Old School Sin is going to be a little distracted in the upcoming future and won't be, as into his battles as he has been. So I know that that's a little bit of a disadvantage. I know that up until this point in the league, he hasn't proven to be one of the better battlers in this league. Whereas, the exception in the Tampa Bay Lux Rays have really, they've built a resume, right? They've been playing well. They've been bringing some interesting sets, and they've been going toe to toe with some of the bigger, Goliaths in this league, even toppling the Swami. So, it's not to say that, like with Goffies, it's not to say that Old School Sin's a bad battler by any means. It's just that the odds are stacked against him this week, and I like to go with the odds.
Well, saying the odds, because a lot of the analysts, we always choose the odds. We've been wrong several times when we all pick one team, and that happened a couple weeks ago. I think you were the only one a couple weeks ago that went positive that week. Maybe you and Spastic.
I'll take it.
But I just see, because of Old School, the issues Old School Sin is having in personal life right now, the fact that he is getting ready to move, so he's not going to be 100% focused in on this battle. Just based on that fact alone, well, that and the fact that he's relatively new to battling, I have to say that this one favors the exception 90% of the time. 9 out of 10 times, if the situations were the same, the exception wins this matchup because of his team.
There is that one, though.
There's that one. This could be that one. He could be bringing something that's really out of the way. He tries to bring some really creative heat set that ends up not working, and it bites him, in the back. I mean, which week was it against Goffies? He brought that. He brought that really good Araquanid set. The issue was it really couldn't touch Volcanion because the only thing it could do was Toxic, and then it became somewhat of a stall set. So maybe if he tries something like that again, it may not work because Sin's team is really offensive. The one thing I touched on last week with Sin, he doesn't really have too many Pokemon that can just set up and then sweep your team. He doesn't use, I think he's used maybe once or twice sub Chandelure. He's only brought, or he hasn't really got Mimikyu going off the ground to maybe set up a sub or an SD or anything like that. So Sin's team is just, I'm going to hit you and then I'm going to get out. I'm going to hit you and I'm going to get out. It doesn't really have an in-game strategy or a long-run strategy. This is one thing I've always seen with Sin's teams this season. But that's something you learn with experience. It's when do I find where's my opening, and when do I take advantage of it?
Right. Precisely.
So yeah, I think this just comes down to experience.
Yep. And that's what a lot of these matchups comes down to.
Yeah.
I think that's the coaches doing up until this point. How
I think
have
that's
they been doing before the season even started, right?
Yeah, I think that's just going to be the way the end of the season works. We're in the second half of the season, so now it's just experience that kicks in. Who's the more experienced player?
We're seeing the results, right? If you're a good battler and you've got a good team, you're going to be getting wins. And there might be an exception or two. Shout out to Papa C. But on average, we're going to get to this point where we're going to look at two matchups. We're going to say, hey, are you actually really comfortable with your team? Have you shown us that you can team build well, that you can actually use your Pokemon in the battle well? And if not, we're not going to pick you.
That's pretty much how it goes.
And it's not like I'm going to try to make out our picks to be the most sought after things in the world. No. So it's not like, oh, God forbid we don't pick you and it's the end of the world. But that's just kind of the thought process, right? And
yeah,
it's not it's that crazy or out there of a thought process.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I make my picks pretty much in about 5 seconds. I just look at it and say,
unless take much longer.
Yeah, maybe if I'm having an issue like I did with the Braviaries and the Star Raptors, maybe I take a quick look at your team, but it's not taking me more than 10 seconds to look at your teams and decide who I want to pick. So I mean, we're not sitting here thinking days about, oh man, who's going to win this battle. Like, we're really just thinking about what we've seen all season and what the teams are. And then we're making our picks in 5 to 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Yep. All right, so our last matchup here, the Maryland Terrapins versus the Orlando Magikarps.
You know, looking at this matchup, really have a lot to say. All the reasons I've already said for like every other matchup pick I've had, just kind of fallen with this one, right? Like there's nothing new to say here. The Maryland Terrapins, they've shown they're good, right? Kelly has shown he knows how to play. He's good at the game. He knows how to team build. He can play with his hyper offense. He can play with more of a balanced team. He, when he loses, he looks back on it. I've seen the reflections in his videos, and he learns from his mistakes, and he's going to keep improving. There's not much to go against that. The Orlando Magikarps, they got a good team, and they put up a fight every single week, but it's just not to the same level, and there's not really much to change that.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have much left to add about that. The thing is, so we've seen in the chat, Kelly is like really adamant against 252 spreads, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing, like Kelly's team building, and I have no idea how he does this because he's in like 4 leagues right now. Kelly's team building is probably some of the best I've ever seen, and it's just like beautiful to see. Like Kelly loves saying, "Oh, you're such a beautiful person." Well, Kelly, your team building is so beautiful. It's like you break it down. You say, "This is my reason why." Some people may look at it and
so
say,
important.
It is. It's like, this is why I'm bringing it. This is why I have this EV spread. It's you know your reasoning. Like
if you've got 200 attack EVs, because that's the minimum you need to do like a minimum roll of 100% to like a certain Pokemon with like 24 or so like leftover HP EVs potentially, then that's all the attack you need. Use that for some other HP to help you live, potentially like a 2-hit KO, and change that into like a 3-hit KO or something from some other mon, right? It's a team building in the counter league format is very different from that on the ladder, and it's kind of like a resource management game more so than anything else. It's streamlining the process, figuring out what you actually need. Which calcs are relevant. Does it matter if your Charizard lives a like Scarf, Lando Tease, Earthquake? No, probably not, because you're not going to leave your Zard in on a Scarf, Lando Tease, Earthquake anyways, right? Like, what might be more important is if there's like a +2 Suicune in front of you. Do you live 2 Scalds? That might be a more important thing to calc for, or something like that. And so what this sort of team building process shows is that Kelly's able to look at the opponent, see the matchup, and anticipate, right, for each mon, what types of situations might this Pokemon run into, and which stat distributions are going to be relevant and help that Pokemon win that 1v1 situation for as many situations as possible. And clearly, when you do that for every single Pokemon, when you do that over and over and refine that process and get good at it, it pays off in the battles themselves.
Exactly. And I think Kelly is, like, if no one's following Kelly, you need to go follow Kelly, especially if you're trying to get better in the draft format, because he's going to tell you why he's running something. He's going to tell you why this EV spread is the right spread to run compared to a 252 spread. Like, he ran 252 spread Charizard X, a couple weeks ago, but he wanted it Spadef and it needed to be that. But outside of that, he's probably only going to invest like 44 speed EVs, because after +1, it still outspeeds somebody's entire team. Use the other speed, or use the rest of those EVs, as you said, and maybe HP or your defenses, or your other defenses. Like, he tells you why there's not always a reason to run, max EVs in every, or the stat that you need. It's just, and he understands it, as you said. He breaks it down. He knows it's not necessary. And like I was saying, his prep is just top of the class, basically.
Couldn't agree more.
But enough fangirling on Kelly, because he may use that against me in the future. But with that, that is our final matchup. Any last words, Midnight?
And any last words? Got like a hitman waiting for me outside the room or something like that. No, I'm excited for this week. They're gonna be, some interesting matchups. I think to me, the game of the week to watch is going to be Gearhart versus Chris Cobain. I think we both, agree with that. I think Jodor is going to be interesting to see what he brings, but what else? Maybe the Rapidash and the Clinks. Those will be a few cool games. It's gonna be worth checking out. And yeah, thanks for having me, Lynx. I'm glad I could replace Levenant as he's on his hot date right now. I hope he's enjoying himself.
Well,
I hope he's not missing the rundown too much. But that's all I got for now. Thanks.
All right. Well, because you have one of the best outros, at least I believe you have one of the best outros. Guys, this is Lynx Forte. Midnight, can you give us an outro?
Of course. And this is Midnight Zero, and this mission is complete.